Hello, Emma Rees Crime here, your fellow crime thriller and mystery book lover. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's video is my August reading wrap up, and at last I managed to get through a decent chunk of books. I have 13 to discuss with you today. As with all my reading wrap up videos, I'm going to start with my least favourite book, work my way up and end on a high on my favourite book of the month. But the real question is, did I score any books 5 stars out of 5? Favourite book of August was a big fat DNF. I have been DNFing more and it is so freeing. Life is too short for rubbish books. So my least favourite book which I DNF'd was The Tapes by Kerry Wilkinson. A kleptomaniac woman steals a jewellery box, and inside this jewellery box she finds trophies from an active serial killer. However, instead of going to the police like a normal human being would, no, she decides to get out that recorder and record the ordeal on tape, and she also talks about how she's now in danger, thus baffling me as to why she didn't go to the police. Surprise, surprise, she disappears, and 13 years later, her daughter comes across these tapes. This started off quite strong, but the more I read, the more I got annoyed because I just felt like the characters didn't behave like how characters should in normal everyday life. I got to about the third way point and I don't know the ending, but I felt like it was pretty obvious who the serial killer is. I tried to Google it to spoil it and I couldn't find out, but do you know what? I didn't care enough to read on, and I was having a look at reviews and I think that DNFing it was the right decision. The reviews aren't glowing. I had another DNF in August, but I was actually really disappointed because I had such high hopes for this, and that was The Condition of Will by Jessa Hastings. Look how beautiful this cover is, and look how stunning the end pages are, but unfortunately I'm going to have to sell it on Vinted because I don't want it on my bookshelf. I love the Magnolia Park series, as you can see here. I think it's like trashy Gossip Girl vibes. I don't find that they read like normal romance books, and I find that they're great palette cleansers. So when she was releasing a new standalone book, The Conditions of Will, I was obviously super excited. Main character Georgia ends up having to reunite with her estranged, toxic family following the death of her father, where she meets her brother's AA sponsor Sam, and she's kind of interested. This did not tick the toxic, trashy Magnolia Parks vibes for me. I felt that this read more like a normal romance book, and some of the topics in it were quite serious, and it just wasn't what I was looking for. So I DNF'd it around the 30% mark. It just wasn't my cup of tea, but I appreciate that that is a me problem because I'm just not a romance girly. I read 2 children's books in August for reasons I'll go into in a second, and I read them from start to finish, but I've decided to not rate them because they're intended for 12-year-olds and I'm 32. I'm not the intended audience for these books, so it didn't feel right to give them a star rating. The first book was The Illustrated Mum by Jacqueline Wilson. If you're from the UK, you may know that she's just released an adult sequel to The Illustrated Mum, so I read this because I just wanted to brush up on my backstory before reading the new release. I've done a whole vlog on this if you're interested. The other children's book I read was A Box Full of Murders by Janice Hallett, and again, as with her adult books, this is a mixed media style book that is aimed at more 12-year-olds. Janice Hallett has an adult book coming out in a couple of weeks, and when that book is released in a couple of weeks, I'll be posting a Janice Hallett Ultimate Book Ranking video, and I wanted to read this as part of that video, and you know what, it was really wholesome and I wanted something easy, and this just hit the spot. The next book was Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. It should come at no surprise to me that I didn't enjoy this because it is completely off-brand for me. However, I was really intrigued because loads of people have been giving this book 5 stars, and also this author is rumoured to be one of the 2 authors who make up the author Evelyn Clark, who's releasing a book next year which is a thriller called The Ending Writes Itself. So I just was interested to see if I get on with this author's writing style. What this book is about, I couldn't tell you. I didn't really get the whole point of the book at all. It was very long and it was very slow, and I didn't get the point of it really. The final quarter was all right, but yeah, no, not for me. I can see why people liked it, but it's not my thing. No one is more disappointed than me that this book is next, because I really wanted to love it. The premise sounded amazing, and I met the author at Theakston Crime Festival, and she was so lovely. A woman walks into a police station with a bat, and her and the bat are covered in blood, but it's not her blood. But she won't talk to anybody. So the real question that the police have to decipher is she innocent and a victim, or is she guilty of something? Remi, Kone, the author, works in TV. She's worked on programmes like Killing Eve. And we spoke about this at book club because it was our book club pick. And the sort of general agreement was that this would be a great TV series, but for a book, there was too many characters and there was just too much going on. It was hard to follow. This is not an easy book to read. This is one where you really have to concentrate. I did give it 3 stars out of 5 because there were elements of the story I really liked. Like, I think the characters, or certainly the main characters, were written really well, but overall there was just too much going on, and I'm not sure, this is book 1 in a series, I'm not sure I'm going to continue on, to be honest. Next we have Bury Your Friends by Benjamin Dean, which is a dark academia YA thriller. Noah and his friends are finally graduating from Woodthorne Academy, and to celebrate they hire out a opulent country estate. What should be a great weekend to unwind ends up taking a sinister turn when a killer starts killing them one by one. I love spoiled, bratty, rich kids behaving badly, and this ticked that box for me. It was light, it was easy, not too much brain power was required. Yeah, it was just an easy book to read. And I gave this book 3.5 stars out of 5. Next up is The Coworker by Freida McFadden. I don't know if it's baby brain or I don't know what's going on, but at the moment I am struggling to concentrate when reading. So I have been working my way through a lot of Freida's books because obviously they're just popcorn thrillers which are quite light and easy. Dawn and Natalie are co-workers, and one day Dawn doesn't show up to work, and that is completely out of character for her, and Natalie is concerned. Dawn and Natalie are 2 completely different people. They're not really friends, but Natalie decides to go to Dawn's house to see if she's okay, and she comes across something quite sinister. I gave this book 3.5 stars out of 5, but it was a strong 3.5 stars out of 5. I did deliberate giving it a 4, but I didn't quite enjoy it as much as the books I'm going to talk to you about, which I gave 4 stars to. But yeah, I just think there's not much I can really say. As with all Freida books, it was just light and easy. We are now in the 4-star book territory. I've spoken in past videos about how I'm normally a bit heavy on the 4 stars, as in I'm a bit generous with some 3.5 stars and a bit mean when it comes to 4.5 stars. So this month I have taken it upon myself to be stricter with not awarding as many books 4 stars as I usually would. The first 4-star book was Knock Knock by Teahan. You've probably seen me speak about this book loads on past videos, but I picked it up at 66 Books. I then met this author a week later at Theakston Crime Festival, and she was so lovely. Marcus and Gina have just moved into the neighbourhood, and they are everything you could want from new neighbours. They're polite, they're quiet. However, Marcus has a dark secret, and you're his next victim. I am personally a fan of domestic thriller, neighbourhood drama thrillers, that type of subgenre of thrillers. And I was drawn to this book because of that, but also I thought that it sounded a bit darker than your usual neighbourhood thriller, which is a good thing in my opinion. The darker the better. This book was perfect for my baby brain and my terrible attention span at the moment. It's got short punchy chapters, and in between some of the chapters there is a dialogue between a therapist and a client, so that just broke it up really nicely and made it so easy to read. Also, it's very floppy, and I just love a floppy book. I thought that this was her first book, but actually it's not. She's written another book which I'm definitely gonna have to check out, but I thought the plot was written really well. I liked the character. Well, I didn't like the characters, but I enjoyed reading about the characters, and yeah, I just thought it was a solid, great book. Next up is The Business Trip by Jessa Garcia. I've been kind of intrigued by this book, and I saw that it was available on Kindle Unlimited, so I thought I'd give it a go. 2 women are on the same flight but for separate reasons. One is going on a business trip and the other is fleeing from her abusive partner. They both send identical texts to their friends and families about how they've met the same man and how wonderful he is, but then their friends and family start to get concerned. This started off incredibly strong. Like, I thought it was going to be a 4.5 star. out of 5 book, but I definitely thought the first half was better than the second, but the second half was still good, but the first half in particular I inhaled. It was such an addictive read, there were some great twists, and the story didn't go in the direction I thought it was going to in a good way. Yeah, I just thought it was a really good book, and I'd really recommend that you check it out. The final book which I've given 4 stars to is That's Not My Name by Megan Lally, which is a YA thriller which again was on Kindle Unlimited, and again I see people rave about this book all the time. The story is told through 2 POVs. The first is the point of view of a girl who wakes up bruised and battered on the side of the road. She has no idea who she is or how she got there. And the second POV is from a boy whose girlfriend is missing, and everyone thinks that he is responsible for her death. Even though she's missing, there's been no body. This is classed as a YA thriller, and sometimes I do find that YA books are a bit babyish, but this didn't read like a YA thriller. I thought the characters were written really maturely. It felt to me like a grown-up book about some kids, if that makes sense. This again, I was gonna give 4.5 stars to. And people say that the twist is crazy, but unfortunately I did see the twist coming a mile off, so I knocked it down 1/2 star and I gave it 4 stars. We only have 2 books left to go. If you've made it this far, then thank you ever so much. If you aren't already doing so and would like to hit that subscribe button, I would really appreciate it. Also, as well as being on BookTube, you can find me on TikTok. You can find me on my Instagram account, and also I have a website where I'm solely putting all my book reviews on there, so they're just in one place together, and the link in my bio will take you to all 3 of these places if you're interested. Now on for the final 2 books. My second favourite book of August was Little Secrets by Jennifer Hillier. Maureen appears to have it all. Great house, handsome husband, great career, very wealthy. However, one day her life falls apart when her child is kidnapped. She doesn't have full faith in the police, so she does hire a private investigator. And this private investigator uncovers that her husband is having an affair, and Maureen has already lost her child. She is not about to lose her husband too. I do not know what Jennifer Hillier puts in her writing, but I cannot get enough of it. I think that she is a fantastic, really talented author. This is my 3rd book of hers. I've also read The Butcher and also Jar of Hearts, which I gave both of them 5 stars. So I had really high hopes for this. However, it wasn't quite a 5-star read for me, just because I didn't enjoy it as much as the other 2, but I still thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. My favourite book of August was The Girl Who Was Taken by Charlie Donlea. 2 girls who attend the same high school who don't like each other are at the same party, and they are kidnapped on the same night. One of the girls returns home 2 weeks later, however the other girl is still missing, and it's been a year. Olivia, who is a forensic pathologist who happens to also be the sister of the girl who is still missing, autopsies a body and discovers that this body might be linked to the disappearance of her sister. This book is also on Kindle Unlimited, as are a few of this author's books. And this is the first book I've read by this author, even though I have Those Empty Eyes by this author. I've had this on my TBR for a couple of years, and I think I started off really strong. What made this a standout for me was, first of all, I didn't guess the twist. So that's always a winner, because I'm notoriously good at guessing twists. But the main thing which really stood out for me was there was quite a lot of elements of forensic pathology within the story. Like, I don't know if it's correct or if it's true, but I found it really fascinating, and it added a really interesting layer to the story. I also wasn't a fan of the character of the girl who was still missing. Normally when a character is missing, you normally kind of not bothered about them, or you like them, but I didn't like this girl, so again it added a really interesting sort of depth while reading it. Now the real question is, did I give this book 5 stars out of 5? Unfortunately, no, I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5 because the ending, I can't tell you why, because it's a spoiler, but if you know, you know, and you're just gonna have to read it to find out yourself. And even though I didn't like the ending, the book is absolutely fantastic, and I really, really think that it's a must read. In my July reading wrap up, I included an August TBR section. However, I'm notoriously terrible at sticking to reading planned TBRs. However, I have posted a recent book haul here, and some of the books in this book haul may or may not feature in my September TBR, depending on how I feel. Also, have you checked out my latest video of me rebuilding my Jacqueline Wilson book collection? If not, you can find it here. Thank you ever so much for taking your time to watch this video. As always, let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you. Bye.